Who invited you? Simone Carter stood in the center of the hotel ballroom wearing the white satin dress she had chosen for her wedding rehearsal. Around her, conversation stopped. Champagne glasses hovered halfway to startled lips. At the entrance stood Lorraine Carter, the mother Simone had not seen in 28 years. Lorraine held a weathered wooden box against her chest. "I thought you did," Lorraine answered. Simone's expression hardened. "I was 3 years old when you walked away from me. You don't get to return 3 days before my wedding and pretend to be my mother." Lorraine's fingers tightened around the box. "Simone, I never stopped trying to reach you." A woman in a gold evening dress quickly stepped between them. "That's enough," Denise said. "You've caused this family enough pain. Before we dive deeper, let us know in the comments where you're watching from. We'd love to hear from you, and don't forget to hit that subscribe button so you never miss any of our upcoming videos." 3 days earlier, Lorraine Carter had no idea her daughter was getting married. She was sitting behind the front desk of the Eastwood Community Literacy Center in Atlanta, repairing the torn cover of a children's book, when her telephone rang. The number was unfamiliar. Lorraine nearly allowed it to go to voicemail. Most calls arriving after 5 were parents asking whether the center remained open late. But something made her answer. Lorraine Carter speaking. "Mrs. Carter, this is Maya Brooks from Bellwether Events. I'm calling to confirm your arrival time for the Carter-Holloway wedding in Savannah." Lorraine's hand stopped over the book. "I'm sorry. Which wedding?" There was a brief silence. "The wedding of Simone Carter and Adrian Holloway." Lorraine lowered herself into the nearest chair. "Could you repeat the bride's name?" "Simone Carter." 28 years had passed since Lorraine last heard her daughter's voice in person, but Simone's name still carried the power to reopen every wound Lorraine had learned to hide. "Mrs. Carter? Are you still there?" "Yes. Our records identify you as the bride's biological mother. We need to confirm whether you'll attend the rehearsal tomorrow evening." Lorraine looked toward the framed newspaper clipping on her desk. It showed Simone graduating from nursing school. Lorraine had not attended the ceremony. She had stood across the street afterward, watching other families surround their graduates with flowers and balloons. Simone never knew she was there. "I haven't received an invitation," Lorraine said. "That's strange. We mailed one 6 weeks ago. It never arrived. We also sent an electronic invitation." "I didn't receive that either." Lorraine reached for a pen, though her fingers were trembling too badly to write. "Are you certain Simone placed my name on the list?" "I didn't prepare the original family list," Maya explained. "But your name, telephone number, and current address are all here." Lorraine's heart began pounding. For years, Charles and Denise claimed they did not know where she lived. Whenever she attempted to send something to Simone, it was returned, ignored, or lost. Yet her correct address was sitting in a wedding planner's file. "Did Simone ask you to call me?" "I'm not certain. I'm simply following up with guests whose arrangements haven't been confirmed." Lorraine stared at the repaired children's book in front of her. "Where is the rehearsal being held?" After the call ended, Lorraine remained inside the empty literacy center. Outside, parents collected their children. Cars pulled away from the curb. The evening custodian moved through the hallway, switching off the lights. Lorraine heard none of it. Her daughter was getting married. Somewhere in Savannah, Simone had selected a dress, chosen flowers, and tasted wedding cakes. She had planned one of the most important days of her life without the woman who had given birth to her. Lorraine told herself she should not go. A name on a guest list was not an apology. It might not have come from Simone at all. Then Lorraine remembered the question she had asked herself on every one of Simone's birthdays. What if my daughter believes I stopped trying? Lorraine locked the center and drove home. Her small house was filled with books, plants, and photographs of children whose lives she had touched through her literacy work. There were no recent photographs of Simone. Only newspaper clippings Lorraine had collected from a distance. She entered her bedroom and knelt beside the cedar chest at the foot of her bed. Beneath a folded quilt was a weathered wooden box. Lorraine carried it to the kitchen table. Inside were 28 years of letters. There was one for Simone's 4th birthday, written months after Lorraine lost custody. Another marked the day Simone began kindergarten. There were letters for Christmas mornings, graduations, and milestones Lorraine learned about through relatives who contacted her secretly. Every letter was a copy. Lorraine had mailed the originals. Some were returned unopened. Others disappeared without explanation. Not one received an answer. For years, Lorraine believed Simone had read them and chosen silence. But if someone knew enough to place Lorraine's current address on that wedding list, perhaps that person had known how to reach her all along. Lorraine selected the first letter she had written from the treatment center. The paper had faded around the edges, but the words remained clear. My precious girl, one day you may hear that your mother went away. I need you to know that I left because I loved you enough to get better. Lorraine touched the words. Then she noticed something she had almost forgotten. Attached to the copy was an old postal receipt. Across the bottom, someone had written. Delivered to D. Carter. Denise. Lorraine's younger sister had signed for the letter. Yet Denise later testified that Lorraine never attempted to contact Simone. Lorraine stared at the receipt as a possibility she had refused to consider began forming inside her. For nearly 3 decades, she had asked why her daughter never answered. She had never asked who might have prevented the letters from reaching her. The following afternoon, Lorraine placed the wooden box on the passenger seat and began driving toward Savannah. She was not going to demand a place in the wedding. She was not going to insist Simone call her mother. She wanted only one answer. Had Simone rejected her, or had someone made that decision for both of them? By the time Lorraine reached the hotel, the rehearsal had already begun. Through the glass doors, she saw guests gathered beneath enormous crystal chandeliers. Then she saw Simone. Her daughter was no longer the 3-year-old Lorraine remembered. She was a grown woman with long natural curls, wearing a white satin dress and laughing beside the man she would soon marry. For one fragile moment, Lorraine considered leaving. Then Denise appeared beside Simone in an elegant gold dress. Denise whispered something into Simone's ear. Simone smiled and rested her head briefly against Denise's shoulder. The gesture pierced Lorraine more deeply than anger ever could. Denise had not merely taken Lorraine's place. She had allowed Simone to believe that place had been freely abandoned. Lorraine picked up the wooden box. She crossed the lobby and opened the ballroom doors. Dozens of faces turned. Simone's smile disappeared. Who invited you? Now Lorraine stood inside the ballroom while Denise blocked her path. Charles Carter rose from his seat in the front row. At 61, he was still tall and commanding, but his hair had turned gray at the temples. His face tightened when he saw the box. Lorraine, he said. You need to leave. I received a call about the wedding. You misunderstood. Simone looked from Charles to Lorraine. What call? Lorraine answered without taking her eyes off Denise. The wedding planner called to confirm my attendance. Denise gave a short, humorless laugh. Then someone made an administrative mistake. Maya Brooks, the wedding planner, stepped out from near the stage. It wasn't a mistake, she said. Mrs. Carter's name was on the original guest list. Simone frowned. I never put her name on my list. Maya glanced at her tablet. The family list was sent to our office several months ago. Mrs. Carter's information was included. Who submitted it? Your father's assistant forwarded the final document. Everyone turned toward Charles. He adjusted his jacket. My office used an old family contact list. Lorraine's name must have been included accidentally. Denise seized the explanation. There. That's what happened. An old name appeared on a list. Lorraine looked at Charles. An old name? This is not the place, he said. You're right. The right place would have been 28 years ago, when you told our daughter I left her. Simone stepped forward. You did leave. No. I entered a treatment program for 6 weeks. You signed a letter saying you didn't want to come back. I never wrote that letter. Denise moved closer to Simone. Don't let her confuse you. We told you the truth. Lorraine lowered the wooden box onto a nearby table. The hinges creaked as she opened it. Inside were dozens of envelopes, birthday cards, postal receipts, and photographs arranged by year. The sight of them silenced even Denise. If I abandoned you, Lorraine said, someone needs to explain why this box contains 28 years of letters I wrote trying to come home. Simone stared at the contents. Then she looked at Lorraine with renewed anger. You could have written those yesterday. Lorraine absorbed the accusation without reacting. That's true. But I couldn't have created postal receipts from 28 years ago. I couldn't have forged returned envelopes with addresses from every house where your father raised you. Charles approached the table. Simone, you don't have to entertain this. Lorraine placed her hand over the box. No one is taking it. I wasn't going to take it. You took everything else. A murmur traveled through the ballroom. Simone's fiancé, Adrian, stepped closer to her, but she raised a hand, signaling that she wanted to handle the situation herself. What do you want from me? Simone asked Lorraine. The truth. Whose truth? Yours. I need to know whether you received any of these. Lorraine removed a pale pink envelope. On your 7th birthday, I sent you a silver box shaped like a heart. You had just lost your first tooth. I wrote that you could keep it there. Simone's expression shifted. The silver box still sat inside a drawer in her bedroom. Denise had told her it came from an elderly aunt. Lorraine selected another envelope. On your 12th birthday, I sent you a blue sweater because your grandmother told me blue had become your favorite color. Simone remembered the sweater. Denise claimed she'd purchased it during a business trip. When you turned 16, I sent you a silver charm bracelet. One charm was a book because I heard you loved reading. Another was a tiny music note because you had joined the school choir. Simone instinctively touched her wrist, though the bracelet was not there. She had kept it for years. Who told you those things? She asked. Your grandmother spoke to me secretly. She believed I deserved to know something about my own daughter. Charles looked away. Lorraine lifted a smaller envelope. And I sent a music box that played You Are My Sunshine. Simone's face lost its color. She still had that music box too. It had an inscription underneath, Lorraine continued. No distance can make me stop loving you. Denise stepped toward the box. Someone could have told her about those gifts. Simone turned toward her. You told me you bought the music box. I did. Then how did she know the inscription? Denise hesitated. It was already engraved. No, Lorraine said. I chose the words. Denise reached for Simone's hand. You were a child. I didn't want you building your hopes around occasional gifts from a woman who refused to be present. Simone pulled her hand away. She said she tried to be present. She's lying. Lorraine removed the old postal receipt. Then explain your signature. Denise stared at it. You signed for my first letter from the treatment center. You testified a few months later that I never contacted Simone. I signed for hundreds of packages over the years. I don't remember one envelope. It was addressed to my daughter. You were ill, Lorraine. You wrote things you didn't remember. You made promises and changed your mind. For an instant, Lorraine was back inside the courtroom, listening as Denise described her as confused, unpredictable and unsafe. But Lorraine was no longer 31. She was no longer frightened or ashamed of having needed help. I remember everything, she said. I remember trusting you. Simone closed the wooden box. I can't do this here. She turned and walked out of the ballroom. Adrian followed her. Denise immediately faced the guests. I apologize. Lorraine has struggled with emotional problems for years. The words were carefully chosen, just as they had been in court. Lorraine noticed several guests exchange uncertain glances. Charles leaned closer. You made your appearance. Now leave. Lorraine picked up the box. I'm not leaving Savannah until Simone decides whether she wants to speak to me. She doesn't. You've been speaking for her since she was 3. Lorraine returned to her hotel room and placed the box on the desk. She had exposed the letters, but Denise had already begun reshaping what everyone witnessed. By morning, Lorraine feared she would once again become the unstable woman disrupting a happy family. At 10:30, someone knocked. Lorraine expected Charles. Simone stood in the hallway holding the silver music box. May I come in? Lorraine stepped aside. Simone placed the music box beside the wooden box. Read me the first letter. Lorraine found the envelope written during her first week in treatment. Her hands trembled as she unfolded it. She read about Simone's yellow dress, the curls that formed above her ears after a bath, and the way she cried whenever one sock slipped from her foot. Lorraine wrote that she was receiving help because frightening thoughts and sleeplessness had overwhelmed her after childbirth. She promised she was getting stronger. Most importantly, she promised that none of it was Simone's fault. When Lorraine finished, Simone remained silent. Denise told me you could barely remember my name. I remembered everything about you. She said you refused to hold me. Some days I was frightened to hold you because I was terrified I might fail you. That's why I asked for help. Simone stared at the letter. Why didn't you fight harder? The question wounded Lorraine, but she had expected it. I fought until every attempt was used against me. When I called, your father recorded my desperation. When I came to your school, they called the police. When I petitioned for visitation, Denise testified that seeing me caused you nightmares. I did have nightmares. They began after you were told a dangerous woman wanted to steal you. Simone looked down. She remembered Denise locking the doors after the school incident. She remembered Charles checking the windows and warning her never to go anywhere with the woman who had called her name. They had not told her Lorraine was her mother until years later. Even then, they described the school incident as an attempted abduction. Simone placed the letter on the table. You could have found another way. I searched for one every day. That isn't an answer. No, Lorraine said softly. It isn't. It is only the truth. Simone walked toward the window. In the reflection, Lorraine could see anger fighting with uncertainty. Then Simone revealed something Lorraine had not expected. 7 months earlier, Simone had given birth to a daughter named Ava. Ava lived for less than 1 day. Afterward, Simone stopped eating and sleeping. Some mornings, she could not force herself out of bed. Denise stayed with her during the worst weeks. But one afternoon, when Simone refused to attend a family gathering, Denise lost patience. She told me grief reveals what kind of mother a woman really is, Simone said. Then she said you felt trapped after I was born. She said I should be grateful I was stronger than you. Lorraine covered her mouth. She had not known she was a grandmother. She had not known Ava existed. Denise had taken Simone's deepest wound and used it to deepen another. I wasn't weak, Lorraine said. I was ill. Asking for treatment was the strongest thing I knew how to do. Then why did Denise make it sound like you hated me? Because if you believed I loved you, you might have searched for me. Simone took a slow breath. Do you have the letter they used in court? A copy. Your father submitted the original. Lorraine removed a folder from beneath the letters. Inside was the statement supposedly bearing her signature. It claimed Lorraine felt burdened by marriage and motherhood and wanted to begin a new life. Simone compared it with the letter Lorraine had just read. The handwriting was similar, but the signatures were noticeably different. Who wrote this? I don't know. But I know I didn't. Simone photographed both documents. Before leaving, she looked at the wooden box. Don't bring that to the wedding. Lorraine's heart sank. Then Simone added, I'm not saying you can't come. I'm saying I don't want my wedding turned into a trial. I understand. Simone reached for the door. Did you really come to my graduation? Yes. Where were you? Across the street near the pharmacy. Simone closed her eyes briefly. She remembered seeing a woman holding yellow flowers near the corner. The woman disappeared before Simone could see her face. Good night, Lorraine. It was not Mom. But it was the first time Simone had spoken her name without anger. The next morning, Simone contacted the treatment center where Lorraine had received care. Most detailed records remained confidential, but Lorraine had already signed permission for Simone to receive information. The administrator confirmed that Lorraine's discharge plan centered on reunification with her daughter. Her records documented repeated requests for visits and telephone calls. There was no mention of Lorraine wanting to abandon Simone. Simone then contacted the courthouse and requested the archived custody file. The original abandonment letter was still inside. At the bottom was a witness statement signed by Denise. Denise claimed Lorraine asked her to deliver the letter to Charles. Simone called Denise and Charles to a private meeting room at the wedding venue. Lorraine was not invited. Simone wanted to hear what they would say when they could no longer blame Lorraine's presence for their answers. She placed the forged letter, the authentic treatment center letter and the postal receipt on the table. Who wrote this? She asked. Charles glanced at Denise. Denise folded her hands. Your mother did. The treatment center says she was planning to return home. Lorraine often changed her mind. The signatures don't match. She was heavily medicated. The center says she wasn't taking anything that would cause memory loss. Charles leaned forward. Simone, your mother's condition was complicated. Records don't show what it was like inside that house. Then tell me. He described Lorraine's sleeplessness and fear. He spoke about finding her beside Simone's crib at night. But every example confirmed that Lorraine had been frightened for her baby, not indifferent to her. Simone turned toward Denise. Did you intercept her letters? No. Did you give me gifts she sent? I may have passed along one or two things without explaining where they came from. The silver box? I don't remember. The sweater? Possibly. The charm bracelet? Denise's composure cracked. What difference does it make? I was the one raising you. It makes a difference because you told me she never sent anything. I was protecting you from disappointment. Did you write the abandonment letter? No. Denise answered quickly, but Charles looked toward her again. Simone saw it. Dad? Charles lowered his eyes. Denise stood. This meeting is over. No, Simone said. Sit down. The authority in her voice startled them both. Simone called Maya into the room. The wedding planner carried her tablet. At the rehearsal, Simone said, You told Lorraine her name appeared on the original list. Was there anything else you didn't tell us? Maya looked uncomfortable. After the invitations were mailed, someone called our office and canceled Mrs. Carter's invitation. Denise's expression froze. Who? Simone asked. The caller identified herself as a member of the bride's family. Denise reached for her purse. This has nothing to do with letters written decades ago. Simone blocked the door. Did you make that call? Of course not. Maya placed the tablet on the table. Our office records calls involving guest list changes. She touched the screen. Denise's voice filled the room. Lorraine Carter will not be attending. The bride wants no contact with that woman. Remove her from the list and do not call her again. The recording ended. No one spoke. Simone looked at Denise as though she were seeing a stranger. You used my name. I was protecting your wedding. From the woman you said stop trying to contact me? I knew she would create a scene. She didn't know I was getting married until Maya called her. Denise looked toward Charles. He offered no help. Simone placed one hand on the table to steady herself. If you could lie about what I wanted 3 days ago, why should I believe anything you said about what I wanted when I was 3? Denise began crying. She insisted she loved Simone. She reminded her of school lunches, illnesses, and sleepless nights. She listed every sacrifice she had made. Simone listened. Then she asked again. Who wrote the abandonment letter? Charles finally spoke. Denise did. The words seemed to empty the air from the room. Denise stared at him. You asked me to. Simone turned toward her father. Charles covered his face. When Lorraine entered treatment, Charles had been terrified that her condition would become public. He was a young school administrator hoping to become principal. He believed a wife receiving psychiatric care would damage his reputation. Denise was already spending most nights at the house. Their relationship had begun before Lorraine entered treatment. When Lorraine started discussing her return, Charles panicked. He told Denise that if Lorraine came home, their relationship would end and Denise would lose Simone. Together, they created the letter. Charles used it to obtain emergency custody. Denise testified that Lorraine wanted to disappear. They expected Lorraine to feel too ashamed to fight. But Lorraine kept writing, calling, and filing petitions. Every time she reached out, Charles portrayed it as instability. Denise intercepted letters because she feared Simone might one day read them and question everything. Years later, Charles wanted to tell the truth. Denise threatened to expose his role in the forged evidence. They had trapped each other inside the lie. Simone paid the price. Charles reached for her hand. We loved you. Simone stepped back. Love that requires me to hate someone else is not love. Denise's tears stopped. You think a box of letters makes Lorraine your mother again? No. But your lies may have stopped making you mine. Simone left the room. She postponed the wedding for 24 hours and spent the day alone in the bridal suite with Lorraine's wooden box. She read the letters chronologically. Lorraine had written about watching from across the street on Simone's first day of high school. She wrote about seeing Simone's name in the newspaper after she earned a college scholarship. She described attending the nursing school graduation from a distance because she feared her presence would cause another confrontation. One letter was marked. Simone's 18th birthday, to be opened when she is ready. Inside, Lorraine explained her illness, the treatment program and the custody battle. She did not ask Simone to hate Charles or Denise. Instead, she wrote, I do not want to steal the family, you know. I only want you to understand that I did not leave because you were unlovable. You were the greatest love of my life. I was surrounded by people who convinced the world that my illness erased that love. Simone read the letter 3 times. That evening, she went to Lorraine's hotel. I'm getting married tomorrow, she said. Lorraine nodded. I don't know how to call you Mom. You don't have to. I don't know how to forgive you for not finding another way. You don't have to do that today either. Simone's eyes filled with tears. Will you help me get ready? Lorraine could not speak. She nodded. On the morning of the wedding, Lorraine entered the bridal suite wearing a burgundy dress. Simone stood before the mirror in her gown. For several seconds, mother and daughter simply looked at each other. Then Simone turned and handed Lorraine the row of satin-covered buttons at the back of the dress. Lorraine fastened them slowly. It was an ordinary task, the kind mothers and daughters performed every day without realizing what a gift it was. For Lorraine, each button represented a birthday she missed, a Christmas morning spent alone, and a letter that never reached its destination. When she finished, Simone turned around. "I wish you had been here when I chose this dress." "So do I. I wish you had known Ava." Lorraine touched her daughter's cheek. "So do I." Simone began to cry. Lorraine pulled her into her arms. It was not the joyful reunion Lorraine once imagined. Their embrace carried nearly 3 decades of grief. But Simone did not pull away. Minutes later, Denise arrived wearing the elaborate gold dress she had purchased as the mother of the bride. An usher had informed her that her reserved seat had changed. She entered the bridal suite without knocking. "You're humiliating me in front of the entire family," she told Simone. Simone remained calm. "No. I'm refusing to humiliate Lorraine one more time. You're replacing me with someone you met 2 days ago." "I met her 2 days ago because you spent 28 years making sure I couldn't meet her sooner. I raised you. No one is denying that. I was there for every fever, every school meeting, and every heartbreak. And she would have been there too if you hadn't helped remove her." Denise turned toward Lorraine. "You came here to destroy my family." Lorraine shook her head. "I didn't come to take a mother away from Simone. I came because someone took my daughter away from me." Denise had no answer. At the ceremony, 2 chairs stood in the front row. Lorraine sat in one. The other remained empty. On it rested the weathered wooden box. When Adrian asked Simone what it represented, she said, "The years my mother spent trying to reach me." Denise watched the ceremony from the back of the chapel. Charles was not invited inside. Lorraine did not feel satisfaction when she saw them separated from the celebration. Justice could not restore Simone's childhood. It could not allow Lorraine to hold Ava or recover the years stolen from them. But the truth gave them something the lies never could. It gave them a beginning. 6 months after the wedding, Lorraine sat at Simone's kitchen table with a cup of tea. Every Sunday, they opened one letter from the box and read it together. Some letters made them laugh. Others ended in silence. Their relationship remained complicated. Simone still loved parts of the childhood Denise had given her. She grieved the woman she believed Denise had been. Lorraine never forced her to choose. Charles mailed several apologies. Simone returned them unopened. She told him forgiveness could not begin until he stopped describing his actions as mistakes and named them for what they were. Denise remained silent for several months. Then, one Sunday morning, a package arrived. Inside was a bundle of unopened envelopes tied with a faded yellow ribbon. They were the original letters Lorraine had mailed throughout Simone's childhood. Denise had kept them all. At the bottom was a note. "I told myself I was protecting her. The truth is, I was afraid that if she knew you loved her, she would stop loving me." Simone read the note and began to cry. Lorraine placed her hand over her daughter's. "What do I do with this?" Simone asked. "You don't have to decide today." Simone untied the ribbon. Among the envelopes was the first letter Lorraine wrote from the treatment center. The paper was worn, but the words remained clear. "My precious girl, one day you may hear that your mother went away. I need you to know that I left because I loved you enough to get better." Simone pressed the letter against her chest. For most of her life, she believed her mother's absence meant she had not been worth staying for. Now she understood. Lorraine had never stopped reaching for her. The tragedy was not that a mother abandoned her daughter. It was that 2 people who loved each other had been taught to mistake silence for rejection. Sometimes, the last page cannot restore everything that was taken. Sometimes, it simply reveals who was still holding on when everyone else told you to let go. If this story touched your heart, tell us in the comments, could you ever forgive Denise and Charles for what they did? If you were Simone, would you allow Denise back into your life? Thank you for staying with us until the last page. Please like this video, subscribe to the Last Page Stories and turn on your notifications so you never miss another powerful story of betrayal, truth, and redemption.